Hey guys, I'm Alex.
And I'm Amber. It's Tuesday, and you know what that means.
It's another episode of True Crime and Chill. Okay, so Amber, before we get started with this, do you know what a family annihilator is?
Well, based on that, I'm going to guess it's somebody who annihilates their family.
Okay, so not exactly. Okay, so for our listeners and for Amber, who may not know exactly what a family annihilator is, it's basically a member of the close family, parent, grandparent, child, usually the dad, that kills most or all of the immediate family before killing themselves. It's also known as familicide. Almost all perpetrators are male and usually the father. David Wilson of Birmingham City University actually says the reasons can be separated into 4 different groups. The first one is anomic. It's these people kind of see the family purely as status symbols. So if the charade is blown, if one of the family members makes a fool of themselves, if they're having money issues, if they're having financial problems, then the family basically becomes dead weight. So the family basically becomes dead weight. They need to be getting rid of. The second category is disappointed. So this is basically one that seeks to punish the family for not meeting the standards that he had set for them in the first place. So basically, if they're on a pedestal and they make a mistake, then that might be a stressor. Another one is self-righteous. They actually kill the family to get back at the mother, and then something that he will eventually blame her for in the end if he doesn't kill himself. And then the last one is paranoid, who actually believes killing their family will save them from something even worse that is coming. Those ones who do that usually have serious cases of mental disorders that have been undiagnosed, brain issues, mental issues, health issues, stuff like that. Some famous examples of family annihilators are the Hart family crash, William Parente, Chris Benoit, the wrestler. He actually falls into the paranoid section for that. And one of our cases, Ronald Defoe Jr.
Right.
As well as the subject of this week's case, Chris Watts.
And what category does Chris fall into?
So Chris kind of falls into multiple categories, but I'm going to tell you the story and let you and our listeners make that choice for themselves. So Chris and Shanann Watts both grew up in North Carolina, but in different towns. They ended up meeting in 2010 because he had actually popped up on her Facebook as a person you may know. Shanann had actually deleted the friend suggestion for him because she didn't need to be in a relationship at the time. 2 months later, she ended up being diagnosed with lupus. So she mentions in a live video that is actually on her Facebook still. And I actually sat down and watched 30-minute video and stuff because she was talking about it, promoting her company and the product that she sold, which is Thrive. And it's really weird to watch videos of people who are no longer here anymore, especially when you know what happened. And in the video, she actually says how she ended up losing a lot of her friends because they really couldn't understand how sick she was because she looked so healthy.
Yep. I mean, I totally get it. A lot of invisible illness tends to create a divide between people in your life because you can tell them all day the symptoms and feelings you're having. But unlike with regular illness, that are more seen or you break bones, they don't get it because, quote, you just look so healthy, right?
Yeah.
But I have friends with like PCOS and stuff, and I have plenty of friends that have lost friends because they're just tired of hearing, oh, you just need to exercise more. Oh, you just need to go outside more. And it's like, that's not what this is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And honestly, I can really see where she's coming from because, people who deal with anxiety issues and like depression issues, especially they get so tired of hearing people be like, oh, well, this is what you need. It's like, gee, maybe if I would have tried doing that a long time ago, this all would have been prevented. It's like, so I kind of get where she, where she was coming from. Like, she felt like no one really understood her. Like, her family, like her mom and her dad and her brother, of course, like understood her and supported her, and friends that stuck around were very few, but those are the ones that, understood what she was going through. But most of her friends were made online. She actually ended up quitting her job because, I think she worked at this job for like 9 years. She ended up quitting this job because they kept telling her, well, you just look so fine. And she's just like, you guys aren't supporting me with this. And this is a huge thing that I'm going through.
Yep.
So her quitting her job and her getting diagnosed with lupus actually, made it to where she met Chris. So he had actually ended up sending her a friend request on Facebook. So the first time it was because he had popped up in the suggested friends, and like her cousin had like sent her his profile, and she was just like, nah. But this time he saw her and he was just like, add. And in her video, she's actually quoted as saying, "Oh, what the heck? I'm never gonna meet him, except." And from there, they were constantly talking and eventually ended up making it serious. 2 years later, in 2012, they got married. And in 2013, they actually had their first daughter, Bella Marie. At this point, they had also moved to Colorado due to Chris's job with Anadarko Petroleum, and ended up buying like this beautiful 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. Like, I have seen pictures of this place, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And like I was telling you before we had started, it kind of stands out in the neighborhood. Like, it really does. It kind of stands out in the neighborhood because a lot of the houses are like these like 1 stories with like, they're very like, they blend in. They're all like it's all a subdivision. But this house is like just absolutely gorgeous. Like 2-car garage, 2-story. I think it was actually 3 stories technically with the basement, but like all this stuff.
Big basement. Whew.
Right? That basement is huge. So in 2015, their youngest daughter, Celeste, or Cece, everyone called her, was born as well. Now, due to Shanann's issues with lupus, just getting pregnant and delivering Bella was a miracle in itself. So you can imagine how happy she was to actually have a safe and healthy pregnancy with Cece as well.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, ironically, one of my friends with PCOS, she when I first met them, I was doing photos for them, and they came out here from Bremerton so I could do their first anniversary photos. And also, she had just found out that she was expecting, and so they were going to sort of be like their announcement photos too.
I remember.
And then a few weeks later, she found out that she lost the baby.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
And that had been her second miscarriage. And so they were really, upset about it. Yeah. Well, then she found out she was pregnant a 3rd time, and they didn't have a lot of hope for it. But she ended up carrying it to term and having the baby. And he's a great kid. I got to do their maternity photos, the newborn photos. I did his 1-year photos. Like, I went out to Bremerton and I took all those photos, and it was really neat to, see their family grow and how much it meant to them. But because of her, her condition, people are asking, "Oh, aren't you going to have another one?" The way people do, like, "Oh, when are you going to start having kids? When are you going to start your family? Oh, when are you going to create a sibling?" Like, I get it with my son. And it's like, I'm not married. Like, my son's 10 and I'm in a happy relationship right now, but it doesn't mean that I need to grow my family more.
Like, I still get it with my 2 boys. "Oh, when are you going to have another one to try and even it out?" And I'm like,
it's like, mind your business.
Right? People, PSA, do not ask people when they're planning to start a family or planning to have another baby, because you don't know what's going on.
Right. And so, yeah, like with my friend, because it was so rough the first time and they had so many miscarriages leading up to the one son that they do have, who looks just like his dad. Oh my God. They don't want to try again. And, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, but don't be pressuring people.
Yeah,
and
don't push it.
I think honestly, that's how, like, I didn't find any like record of it, but honestly, with Shanann suffering from lupus and stuff, like, it wouldn't surprise me if that's how she felt as well. Like, but being able to have both girls back to back, like within 2 years of each other, like that's amazing. That's honestly amazing.
Yeah.
Now, as the years went by, it seemed like Cece had actually had some health issues as well. She was severely allergic to peanuts, as well as tree nuts, something that actually got increasingly worse every time she went to the allergy specialist. In fact, the allergy was so bad, it ended up causing a fallout with Shanann and Chris's mother, Cindy.
How so? That's weird.
So I guess when the family went and visited Cindy and Ronnie, who's Chris's dad, Cindy ended up feeding Cece ice cream that had tree nuts in it, something that Shanann had repeatedly said, do not give her anything with nuts in it, because she didn't know how bad the tree nut allergy was compared to the peanut allergy. She didn't know if it was going to be like anaphylactic shock or if it was going to be like a mild like reaction.
It doesn't matter. So you don't do it. Like,
yep. You don't disobey.
Like when my son was really young, he seemed to have an allergy to strawberries, which apparently is actually really young in kids under the age of 2. Mm-hmm. And my parents, oh my gosh, for his first birthday, decided to buy him a cake, and it had strawberries on it. And I was like, you guys, he can't have strawberries because he breaks out in the rushes. And they were like, oh my God, we forgot. We'll go get another cake. To them, it was just like a I forgot thing. And then they, went
No,
and got a different
she
cake to make up for it.
Deliberately gave Cece and Bella ice cream that had tree
That's
nuts
scary.
because she didn't believe that the allergy was real.
Oh my God, that's so scary.
Oh, there's
how
more.
could you expect, that's somebody you're supposed to be able to trust with your kids.
Oh, yeah. No, there's more. So when Shanann found out there was a fight between her and Chris over text message, basically saying that, if he and his father could not stand up to his mother, and if Cindy couldn't respect her wishes, then she would no longer be able to see the girls.
Well, that's important. I'm sorry, but this isn't just like I told you the kids couldn't have ice cream and then you gave them ice cream anyway. You were spoiling them.
This is
I said he has an allergy and you didn't listen. This is a health concern. It's a safety concern.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have reacted the exact same way.
Yeah,
like, absolutely. And it sounds, it sounds like it's so much like it's just a whole level of mistrust with both Shanann's mother-in-law, where she just doesn't believe anything that she says. And also, it makes Shanann not want to trust her mother-in-law.
Yeah. So Cindy hated Shanann. Hated the woman. She didn't like her, didn't respect her. And honestly, she really wasn't alone in this thinking. It was reported that Chris's grandparents actually didn't go to their wedding because of the dislike of Shanann.
That's so sad. That's sad. I went to a wedding. I've been to weddings where I didn't support the couple. I'll be honest. Where I was just like, I don't see
this working, but I'm going to be here to support you anyways.
Right. I'm sorry. You're my friend. Like, I'm going to be here for you, sorry. And family, there was one time I didn't go to a wedding and I felt really bad about it, but it had to do with weather. It had, she was like family to me, and they were over in Everett, and I just couldn't make the drive because we got like 2 feet of snow. Oh, and there's lots of hills here. So we can't really, and Sawyer was a baby and I just didn't feel comfortable driving all the way, taking a 3-hour drive in 2 feet of snow, as much as I loved them.
And your super crappy car at the time.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't that crappy actually at the time. My little blue car was new. At that time. So it was pretty decent, but I just didn't feel comfortable driving that far. Cause here, this isn't like the Midwest where, they get like a foot of snow and they're like, whatever, school's still open and whatever. Like here we get 2 inches of snow and they shut everything down because we live in the foothills of mountains. So it's just constant hills and it's incredibly dangerous. And because our snow is so rare, we don't have the city utilities in place to get it all cleaned out correctly.
Sheets of ice, for real. So it's bad. It's bad.
Right. People make fun of us here for, when we get snow and we freak out. It's like, yeah, well, we make fun of people in LA because it rains, but it rains so scarcely down there that when it does rain, all the oil goes to the top of the roads and it makes them incredibly treacherous. Mm-hmm. So it's the same kind of thing. Like it's easy from the outside looking in to go, okay, yeah, whatever. You're just silly. But when you're actually there, it's a completely different experience. Yeah.
So, and looking into things, I really couldn't find any reason why Chris's family just didn't like Shanann. And honestly, I think it may have stemmed from Cindy's dislike of her because, mother-in-laws have a good way of making stories seem true. And and the thing is she's just, in all the interviews that I found that have Cindy in them, because, Shanann's parents obviously did some interviews and stuff. But in all the interviews that I have found that have Cindy in them, she is, vocally expressing her dislike for Shanann even now. She will, talk about, how bad of a mom she is, what kind of, person she was, how she didn't have the kid's best interests at heart. She used her son constantly. She's just a terrible woman. Terrible, terrible woman.
I'm not in any place to have an opinion on her, but it certainly sounds like she doesn't believe in not speaking ill of the dead.
No, she really don't. So with the girls having allergies and, just being sick in general, and obviously that could have just been Colorado air, because the air here, it's not because they lived up in the Denver area, which is kind of smoggy and stuff because it's a big city and everything. So they lived right outside of the Denver area in Fredrick, Colorado. And so it may have just been the Colorado air. It may have just been, the girls were just kind of sick all the time. Like, it wasn't really anything too big, but Shanann actually ended up staying home and took care of them while Chris worked. However, like I mentioned before, she hadn't really been without a job because she worked as a promoter for Thrive, which is, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly. It's a brand of the Lavelle company. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But basically, it's a multi-level marketing. The Thrive is like it's a patch that you wear, and it's supposed to promote wellness and energy and all this stuff or whatever. So,
but they're vitamin patches.
Yeah. So yeah, you slap them on and everything. You have them at different places, and a lot of the pictures that Chris and that I looked at with Chris and Shanann, they had at least one or two of the patches somewhere on them in each picture of them. But unfortunately, there still was a lot of financial issues. Even though Shanann works selling Thrive, we both know how unreliable MLM networking is and how hard it is to actually make money in it. And Chris wasn't exactly swimming in cash working his job. Like, don't get me wrong, he made a pretty decent amount working for a petroleum company. He really did. But they ended up having to file for bankruptcy in 2015 because they were behind on bills and mortgage from the house. The pictures and videos, it really seemed like they kind of lived way outside of their means. Like, they wanted to portray like, oh, look what we can do if you just have this financial freedom and everything. And look what we have. And like I said before, that was something Cindy had actually placed solely on Shanann, saying that she used her son to live.
Yeah, it sounds like a group effort, really, when you really look at it.
It really is.
And it's not uncommon, especially in society today, for people to live outside of their means.
Yeah, because that's how we promote as a society. Like, if you don't have this and if you don't have that, then are you really doing well in life? Like, and that's the thing. And like, the thing is, as Chris was just as bad, if not worse, when it came to money. And it really showed in with how expensive he liked his stuff. Like, when people came forward, it showed that he was really materialistic. Like, he wanted the house with 2 garages. When he was talking about finding a house because him and his wife were separating, quote unquote. He wanted a house with 4 bedrooms and 2 garages and all this stuff and blah, 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 and everything. And he wanted all these tools and this nice truck and all this stuff. And yeah. So it wasn't just her. Like, I'm not saying that oh, she's dead, she's the victim, like she's perfect. Like, no, we all have our faults. We all have we all have our demons and stuff. And unfortunately, they were both just as bad with money. So in 2018, on top of all of this, Shanann actually ended up finding out she was pregnant again. This time, they found out it was actually a little boy who they decided to name Nico. So, they have 2 girls and a boy now. Now, there is a video of Chris coming into the room and finding out that they were expecting again. And I showed it to you. But to anybody who didn't know what happened, he comes in, he just kind of seems like a dad who's just really shocked. Like, oh my God, three under 3, because, Bella was 3 at the time and stuff. And so, he's 3 or 4. Yeah. She's 3 or 4. It just kind of looks like he's like, oh my God, another baby and stuff. But, knowing what we know now and then watching it, you kind of see how off he is. Yeah. He's very disconnected. He's not excited at all. And he kind of looks like an animal that those zoo animals that are trapped in cages that they know they need to perform. Otherwise they're going to get caught. If you do want to see the whole video, though, it's going to be up on our website. If you're not watching along with the YouTube video and you want to see the video, it is going to be up on our website, truecrimeandchill.com. But we are going to kind of put a small snippet of it in our actual video and stuff so you can see it.
We did it again. I like that shirt. Really?
Really.
That's awesome. So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome.
So here we are, child number 3. On social media, the Watts seem like the perfect family. Okay, 3 beautiful kids. Well, 2 beautiful kids, 1 on the way, loving husband and wife. But friends and family ended up saying otherwise. And with Shanann getting pregnant, it ended up making things a lot more stressful for them. It actually got to the point where they had gone on a trip, I think it was to LA, earlier that summer in 2008. In 2018, they had gone on a trip early in the summer. It was Chris and Shanann. I think the girls were with family or with a sitter or something, but they went on a trip and they had come home. And Shanann actually packed up her and the girls and went and stayed with her family for 6 weeks during that summer.
Ooh.
Yeah. So for 6 weeks, she was gone. And this was right before they had ended up dying. So she had gone for 6 weeks, come home, and then she went on another trip. And then when she came home from that trip, that's when they died. This was like, those 6 weeks were the last time that Shanann's parents ever got to see her, like, their family anymore. Like, those are the last time Shanann's parents got to see their daughter and their grandchildren alive. And so when Shanann went to North Carolina to go see her parents, Chris barely texted her, like barely talked to her, barely FaceTime, barely texted. He really only called to talk to the girls. And even then it was kind of like few and far between. Shanann had tons of messages on her phone talking to friends about how she thought Chris was going to leave or that he was, cheating on her. And she ended up sending him books on how to help their marriage, even though that he was never really interested. Like when the police went and searched the house and stuff, like you could still see some of the books, like actually like still in the package and stuff like that. It really seemed like she was the only one trying to make it work. And if you go back and look over the case files, which again will be linked on our website, there's almost 2,000 pages of case files that I looked through. And there's some copies of like the text messages that Shanann sent while she was on that 6-week break in North Carolina to some of her friends. And it's like, you can really tell like how upset she is because she's just like, I think Chris wants to leave me. He's talking really weird, like all this stuff. And it's just, it's really sad. It's really sad.
That does sound sad. And I mean, it's hard because, so I don't know how many people know this about me, but I had a huge chunk in my life where I just kept going through bad relationship. I was dating just losers, any way you look at it.
If you can't see me right now, I'm nodding my head.
So I started investing in, learning about relationships and how men and women communicate differently. And one of the things that I learned, and it took me a long time to stop doing this, and I still find myself doing it occasionally. Mm-hmm. And when I do it, I tend to push, my boyfriend gets frustrated because even though I mean well, it's pushing him away, is that, when you're constantly trying to fix things and you're trying to move forward and you're trying to be like, do this, do that, like she's sending in these marriage books, like, right. Like, let's fix this, because as women, we're natural fixers. Yeah. That's what we do. Like, we want to fix the problem. And, and instead of just taking a step back and letting Chris figure stuff out, it sounds like she was pushing him, which he probably didn't like, and it probably was pushing him closer to this sad conclusion. And don't get me wrong, I am in no way saying this is Shanann's fault, because it's not. She was concerned and she was worried about her marriage ending because, not only does she clearly love him, but they've got, 2.5 kids.
Yeah, they got a kid on the way and everything. And it's like, and I totally get that. I get, fighting for your marriage when you have kids and everything. Because, it's a lot harder to walk. It's a lot easier to walk away when you don't really have any attachments to it.
Yep.
But when you got kids, you're kind of like crap because, a lot of us grew up in single family homes. But
I'm weird. I didn't. But...
Well, yeah, you didn't. But
no, my parents are weird. They got married when my mom was 18. They're still married. So
yeah, your parents are weird.
They're good. They're good people, though. At least,
we
weird
love
but
them.
good people.
We love them. So ultimately, it would come out after the murders that the entire time Shanann was gone, Chris was actually with his mistress, Nicole Kessinger.
Always another woman.
Oh, and this one is a peach. So, like, he was with her constantly. I mean, constantly. They had actually met each other at work. She had started working for Andarco. I think it was in May of that year. And she and Chris had actually ended up talking and connecting shortly after.
I mean, did she know he was married?
So in all of her interviews, she has stated that he never wore his wedding ring and that she had no clue that he was married or had kids till after the murders. However, when police, obviously they took her phone for evidence and everything, they went through her search history. And her search history was Chris Watts married, Chris Watts family killer, Shanann Watts, book deal as mistress of family killer, Then she looked up the Scott Peterson case, and then she looked up Amber Frey. How much did Amber Frey make off her book deal?
I'm sensing. It's funny how that Scott Peterson case keeps coming. Like that was the very first case we did.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been listening
a pattern here
from the beginning, but I'm feeling like so many of them resonate with it in some way or another, or come back to it. It's interesting.
But like this was her search history and stuff. Yeah. So Chris had actually told her that he was in the process of a divorce and stuff. So she knew that he was married. So she probably knew, but she probably didn't know that he was still married. Like, because you're gonna believe what the guy. But again, this isn't like back in 2001 when Lacey Peterson went missing, where like Facebook wasn't really a huge thing, and all that. Like this, like literally, if you go and search someone's name on Facebook, you're gonna find information about them. Like, right. So they were actually looking for apartments to move into together. Now, mind you, they'd only been seeing each other for about a month. Okay.
Well, that's always a great sign.
Right. So Shanann comes home from her parents' house, okay, and things don't get any better. The fighting is worse. The couple kind of talked about separation like it was there, but Shanann was like, no, it is last like priority. Like, we're not doing this. That is like the last thing we're going to try and everything. And she was determined to make her marriage work. Ultimately, that was her downfall, unfortunately. She ended up having to leave town again, this time for a Lavelle event. She left the girls home with Chris during that weekend and ended up heading out. So the last night of the event was actually the last time any of Shanann's friends would ever see her alive. So, but they didn't know. So about 1:48 a.m. on August 13th, 2018, Shanann is seen on her Ring security camera, which, let me tell you, these things nowadays for cases are freaking amazing. Like, because they catch everything. They really do. They catch everything. And the Ring sensors actually have sensors around the house. So like it sends to your phone, like when the sensors go off for the doors, for the windows, for the garage and everything.
We have Arlo at my house, but it's the same concept.
Yeah.
And actually I have two younger brothers, and the older one of the two just recently sold his house. And they had a Ring doorbell camera, and we were out at the ocean, and he was able to pull up the security footage from his Ring camera and hear what they were talking about on the porch. So if you're out there looking at real estate, be careful what you say on the porch, especially if it's things about private money matters or what you thought of the house, anything like that, because the owner of the house can look at said footage.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So Shanann got dropped off, and she's being seen on the camera and everything. So you see her walk out. You see her get out of the car. You see her walk up to the front porch and stuff. And her friend Nicole Atkinson, not too many Nicoles, Nicole Atkinson actually waited in the car for Shanann to enter the house before she drove off. Now, everything that happened once Shanann entered the house is complete speculation because everything was said by Chris. Like, it's a mix of the evidence on the girl's body as well as evidence from Chris. 8 hours after she drops her off, Nicole got worried because Shanann was supposed to call her and tell her about the OBGYN appointment that she had that day, but she never did. So she called Chris and asked if he had seen her. By now, it had been about 2 hours after the appointment that Shanann had, so it was kind of unnatural for her to be going this long without responding to text messages, calls, stuff like that and everything. Nicole called Chris. And Chris said his wife said that Chris said that Shanann had said that she was going to take the girls to a friend's house, but Nicole felt like there was more and that Shanann might be in trouble and called in a welfare check by the police.
I mean, I guess it's understandable. It seems kind of, I guess if Chris is at work, it would make sense to call the police for a welfare check.
Yeah. So the reason why she did that is because when she got to the house prior, so like she had tried going to the house herself and everything. And so she had tried going to the house herself and using the key that she had, because Shanann gave her a key to the house because she was over there all the time. She watched the girls for her and everything, stuff like that. It ended up that the top bolt lock, like the chain, was locked so that you can only open the door part way. Because of this, Nicole obviously got worried, and she had stated later that Shanann had diabetes with this pregnancy. So she had been feeling sick at the convention. Because of that, that's when once she had gotten to the house, she realized all that. That's when she had called Chris, and Chris had like told her, no, I hadn't heard from her and stuff. And so she was worried that, Shanann may have gotten dizzy and passed out and stuff and was upstairs and like something had happened. So that's why she ended up calling the police. So when she told Chris,
no, that makes total sense.
right? So when she told Chris and told him that, like, hey, I called a welfare check with the police, Chris was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be there soon, and hung up. Now, I end up watching 3 hours of surveillance video because I have no life and nothing else better to do. And I honestly just really wanted to see what was on it. So it included Shanann coming home the night, the body cam footage of the welfare check, the ensuing body cam footage of them checking the house, as well as Chris getting arrested, as well as the footage from the neighbor's camera of that morning when Chris left. So it has everything. If you have time, sit down, watch it. It'll be on our site as well, but I'll explain a little bit of what I found watching it, just that way you can kind of know. So when the cops showed up, Nicole wasn't frantic, but you can tell that she was panicked and trying to appear calm.
Yeah, she looked worried.
Yeah. Like the entire time she just kind of she looked like something was off.
She was in that like that same kind of almost in a female zone, like when we are worried, right? But we know that we need our heads in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's sort of what she seemed to be in. Like she was like, you could tell she was worried, but she's like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. I don't need to panic because that's not going to be good. There's other people here.
Like something was going on.
Right. Like there's other people here. We got this covered. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. But, and I'm pretty sure because of her being as close to Shanann as she was, it really wouldn't surprise me if she did have a gut feeling that something was wrong. Because like she said,
watching the video, I could tell, like, I was just like, I was getting weird feelings. I was just like,
right?
Something's off.
And like, something's
way off.
Nicole said something in an interview, and then also like Chris said something too on the actual body cam. That's her lifeline. This is her phone. This is her lifeline. Like she wouldn't just not pick it up. The only time she's never really on it is when she's asleep. And so when she was talking to the officer, he asked, have you contacted Chris? And she goes, yeah, he said he was about 10 minutes out, but that was almost 30 minutes ago. So the police officer goes around the house, and it's a pretty big house. So like he has enough time to be able to go around the house, jump down in each of like the pits that the windows are in, check the windows. Then there's 4 of them. So he jumps down each of them, and then he goes around the back, and he kind of checks the alleyway and stuff. And then he goes up the back stairs for the back porch and tries to open up the back porch door right there. And then he tries to open up the one downstairs. And then the neighbor comes out and he's like, hey, what's going on? And the cop is just like, hey, have you seen your neighbor today? Like, we're just kind of wondering what's going on with her and everything. And like, even the neighbor mentioned, she's been kind of she's kind of mentioned to me that she's been kind of feeling dizzy and stuff like that. And so, then, the cop is like checking it everywhere. Like, he's not just like, okay, whatever, like, it's fine. No, he's like actively checking because he's like, if we see something, the second we see something, we can get inside. But we can't go inside without permission from the owners or without probable cause. So like he's actively checking to like see if he can see like, a hand or a leg or a foot or like a child or something.
Right.
And so he was able to basically make a circle around the house about twice before he comes back out to where the driveway is, where by now Nicole's husband had shown up. So it was Nicole, her oldest son, and then her husband as well. Mm-hmm. And so the police officer, opened up the house and opened up the door enough to where the chain opened. He was like, this is Officer so-and-so. Like, is anybody in here? Can you make yourself known or whatever? Like, are you in trouble and everything? And then he comes back out and he's like, so have you heard from Chris? And she's like, no. And so he calls Chris, and Chris kind of seemed agitated that he was calling. But he said that he would be there soon. And so about 15 minutes after the officer called, Chris was there.
Okay. So 45 minutes after the initial call from Nicole, he shows up. Like, he's not, I don't know. I'm not sure what would have taken him so long unless, I don't know what he did at the petroleum company, but it's possible. See, that seems weird. Like, I know, like, if at my work, if I needed to go, I'd be like, my kid is missing or my husband's missing. Like, I need to go right now. They'd be like, yeah, go. So it seems like he kind of took his time to get there, which doesn't seem like he's very worried.
Well, and see, and the thing is, the main thing is there were reports from other coworkers saying, if one of the girls had to go to the doctors or whatever, and Shanann called, Chris would leave. So it wasn't a whole, you didn't know if, he was able to leave. No, if it came to his kids, they knew he had to leave. But from his house, and I looked up on a map, and from his house to Anadarko Petroleum, it's about a 20-minute drive. However, when the girls were found, they were all found at this, site that was way out in the middle of nowhere. So it would explain why that took him so long if he had gone back out to the site since that morning. So he pulls up to the house. He seems very rushed. Barely says a word to the officer besides like, hey, this is who I am. Quickly unlocks the garage, checks Shanann's car, and then goes inside the house. And it took about a minute and a half for him to actually open up the door. And one of the people is actually commenting on the body cam, like, is he ever going to let us in? Like,
Yeah.
Like, and you saw the layout. Like, it should have taken him less than 30 seconds to get from the garage door to the front door.
So the way I see it, like, so what I try to do when there's cases like this, you know, where even though there's been a verdict and stuff, I look at it from, okay, so let's say I'm in Chris's shoes, right? And I find out that my wife is not answering the door and she hasn't been seen. So I'm going to show up to the house and I'm going to start looking through. And okay, yeah, there's a cop here. You know, I see him trying to, I think what he's probably doing, and this is clearly speculation, but I see him trying to appear like he's frantic and that he's looking without trying to arouse suspicion from the cop. Like,
see, but he didn't even look frantic. He just looked annoyed.
But he's trying so hard to appear to be frantic.
Yeah.
That he's forgetting things like, oh yeah, wait, the cop's here. I have to act like I care, you know, like he might find something, you know, like I feel like he's so distracted by trying to appear frantic, but instead he just appears aloof and, you know, like I can't think of a better word for it. He appears, you know, aloof and frazzled, but not.
No, he appears like he's being inconvenienced. He appears like he's being inconvenienced. So after everybody's in the house, it's they all start kind of searching everywhere, seeing if everything's out of place. You watch the body cam footage of the officer, like, you know, going down to the basement, looking around, going to the rooms, looking around. And something that you notice in the rooms is the girls' beds are made, which is like, okay, whatever. But Chris and Shanann's bed is like stripped bare. Like, there's a new sheet on it, but that's about it. Like, there's nothing else on it, nothing. And Chris tried to explain away, like, oh, you know, we had sex last night and everything, so the sheets were dirty and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, okay, whatever. But so they realize, you know, none of the girls are in the house, and they start trying to figure out exactly what happened. Shanann's phone and iWatch are actually found within the cushions of the upstairs couch by Nicole's oldest son, and her purse is still there along with the girls' car seats. But Chris actually mentions in the body cam footage, you know, their blankies are missing. And he actually comes out with Shanann's ring on his finger as if to be like, oh, hey, you know, following up with the story of, like, you know, how she probably is leaving me and blah, 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 and everything, because he's trying to build that story. So the rest of the footage is just Chris, like, you know, somewhat answering questions that the cop is asking while, like, trying not to really interact, rambling about, like, just random stuff. Like, Nicole is really the only one that's actually, like, you know, answering questions and giving information. Like, the cop actually ends up asking, like, hey, like, do you know where they might go? And Chris is like, actually, no, I don't. And Nicole was like, well, you told me on the phone that Shanann was going to go to a friend's house. And he's like, oh, well, I don't really know which one. And, like, to unlock her phone, like, the officer's like, well, do you have a password to unlock her phone? And Chris is like, no, I don't know. And so he tries one, it was denied. And Nicole's like, well, what about Nico's, like, due date and stuff? Which that was the one that unlocked the phone. And it's like, I mean, okay, you know, like, like, that might just be a whatever thing. But, like, at the same time, it's like, you know, like, he didn't seem like he was actively trying to, like, open it up, because he knew that if he did, there would be a lot of, like, evidence on there about him trying to leave and all this stuff, and he probably didn't know what was on there or what Shanann had been saying to other people.
Right. Well, and when you consider the fact that he was having this affair, I mean, yeah, he probably felt quite inconvenienced by the whole thing. You know, like, I don't know where she is. I don't care where she is. She's not here, and let me go back to my mistress. Like,
yeah.
And I am not saying that all men who are having affairs are like that, because that's not always the case. I just feel like in this case that almost is sort of the demeanor that he...
Pretty point on. So eventually the girls are actually classified as missing, and the FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigations end up getting involved. Chris ended up getting interviews to news stations on the 14th, actually pleading for his family to come home. And this is actually where I ended up coming into this case, because I remember my dad, this is back when we had live TV and stuff. And I remember my dad and I were just chilling on the couch and everything. And, you know, because it was August. So, like, my second son had been born at the end of June. So he was about a month old and stuff. He was almost 2 months old and everything. And so we're sitting there on the couch and, you know, the boys are sleeping and, like, my ex was at work and stuff. And I remember watching this interview with my dad, and I just kind of looked at it, and I was just like, Amber, let me tell you, I looked at my dad on the couch who was sitting next to me, and I was like, there is no way in hell he did not have something to do with this disappearance. Either he got rid of them or he had somebody get rid of them. There was no way in hell that he didn't have a hand in this at all, whether he actually did the whole thing or he just helped orchestrate it. And my dad just kind of like laughed at me and went, Alex, you can't blame the husband all the time.
Well, I mean, not all the time, but if it appears that he's guilty, and that's usually, I mean, I would say, 99.9% of the time, the person that they look at initially, and for good reason. It's the person who's supposed to know that person the best.
Well, and the news interview was so weird. Like, okay, I know not everyone grieves the same, okay? We learned this with the Scott Peterson case, okay? But he was almost detached, almost. Mm-hmm. Like, he didn't really get invested unless it was, you know, talking about him. And he would, like, he was doing this because he had to do it, because it was a show he had to put on. So, and he never really references, like, any of them by name. Like, like, I remember distinctly, he goes, you know, Bella would have been starting kindergarten this year. Not Bella is starting kindergarten this year. Bella would have been starting kindergarten. Yeah. Cece would have been starting, like, preschool or something. Like, Shanann was such a great mother. And I remember sitting there watching this going, the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, that's highly suspect.
Well, and I'm just sitting there like, this motherfucker did it. Like, he did. I was sitting here like, he did. My dad's like, Alex, you can't just blame the first person you see. I was like, I should have bet money on this. I should have been like, Dad, I bet you $10 he did it. Because he does the news interview, okay? Yeah. It airs. And then all of a sudden, the night of the 15th, so the next night after like, the news interview airs that the day of the 15th, that night he's arrested.
That escalated quickly.
Right? So he ended up so the reason why he was arrested is because that night he ended up taking a polygraph test and failing miserably. I'm not talking like, you know, his heart rate was a little bit elevated during this question. Like, no, like, the officer actually came in the room and was like, we know you did it. You might as well confess.
Yep.
And so Chris was like, you know, I want to talk to my dad, because his dad was actually because his dad and his sister, I believe, had actually flown into Colorado along with Shannon's parents and stuff. And so his dad was in the police station when he was getting polygraphed. And so he was like, I want to talk to my dad. So Chris asked his dad if he could come in and talk to him. Chris actually told his dad, like, what happened. So Chris is in the room with his dad, and it's being recorded, but it's just them in the room. And he goes that, yes, he had killed Shanann, but only because she had killed their daughters first.
I don't buy that. Yeah. Sorry.
So, according to Chris, okay, Shanann had gotten home around 2 a.m., which is true, because, you know, the Ring doorbell camera caught her about 1:48 in the morning. And the couple, and she ended up coming in, he ended up waking up, the couple ended up having sex. After that, Chris told her that he did want a divorce, and he did, because he just didn't love her anymore. They ended up going to sleep, but he woke up to see Shanann strangling their daughters on their baby cameras. So, like, he looked at the cameras and saw her strangling, like, I guess, like, he said that he saw Bella, like, was, like, all blue in the face, and, like, her tongue was out and everything, and, like, he went into Cece's room and saw Shanann, like, strangling Cece and everything. And then he was in such a rage that he ended up killing Shanann as well. And then after that, he loaded the bodies up and took them to the remote Andarko site.
Okay. I'm gonna stop it right here for just a second. So first of all, what a jerk for trying to pin his kids' murders on his dead wife.
Yep.
But in reality, if that would have happened, he would need some evidence to clear his name. So it would make more sense to, you know, to have either knocked her out or to have, you know, killed her, and then called the police right away saying, there's been an incident. I need help here now, because then there'd be evidence on the girls that, with her fingerprints, like with her hand marks,
or like their skin cells under her fingernails.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah,
he that the fact that he straight up says,
and he said it without any emotion too. Like he's like when you watch the video, it's disgusting how easy he's able to.
It sounds like what he's really doing is separating himself from the murder.
Yeah, it was so easy how he was able to convey the, and I saw her strangling them, and I was just overwhelmed with this fit of rage because she killed my babies. And I'm
no.
Sir.
And then he loaded up the bodies and took them to a site.
Right.
No.
I'm like, dude.
No.
So, and it gets worse. It gets worse from there. Like,
oh, dear God.
I am going to, okay, so I'm going to put, a context warning right here, because what I'm going to explain, because once I get into it, because I'm going to explain, what happened to the girls. And I'm going to explain what happened to Shanann, because it is a huge part of, how this ends and everything. So, his family is sticking with that original story. That Shanann killed the kids and Chris killed her because he was in a rage. That he never touched his daughters because he loved his daughters. Mm-hmm. They refused to believe, even after evidence came out, and even after he said that Shanann did not kill her kids. And that Shanann, the autopsy even said Shanann died first. That Chris killed them. They refused to believe this. So once he confessed to killing them, that's when all the details started coming out. When I mean they started coming out, they literally started pouring out like a dam that was broken. So Chris's story changed so many times. So after he initially confessed to his dad, they brought the detective back in, and so it was Chris, his dad, the detective, and Chris's sister. And in the video, Chris's dad is looking away from Chris and crying and rubbing his back, just so distraught and everything. And Chris's sister is holding his hand and the detective is kind of sitting there letting them conduct it. But his sister's okay, so what happened next, Chris? What did you do next and everything? Talking to him very calmly. And from there, what Chris says is that Shanann got home. The couple did have sex because there was semen found on some of the bed sheets as well as in Shanann's underwear that she had been wearing. And so then he told her, I want to separate. I'm not in love with you anymore. There is someone else. He said that he told her about Nicole, but you never know, what is the truth with this. So obviously she didn't take it well. Chris said that she threatened to take the kids away from him, and he just kind of snapped. He ended up getting on top of her, and he made the mention in the interview video that she was worried that he would hurt the baby. She was like, Chris, you're in a position that could hurt the baby and stuff. And then he ended up just placing his hands around her throat and then just squeezing until she was dead. And a lot of people were it's been speculation of what position she was lying in when he did it. Because, was she sleeping like this and on her stomach with her hands under her head or whatever, and he did it that way? Because there was mascara that was found on the pillow and stuff. But that also could have been from when he flipped her over and he was wrapping her up in the sheets and everything. But regardless, he strangled her. And a lot of people think that maybe the reason why she didn't fight back is because it didn't take as long to kill her, because she had actually had neck surgery. I think it was a year prior. There's a lot of pictures of her with a neck brace and stuff. There's pictures of her and the girls in these jerseys and these really cute tutus that the two girls are wearing and stuff. But Shanann has a neck brace, so she's smiling with her kids, but she's got this giant neck brace. So people think, her airway was already compromised. So when Chris went to go strangle her, it happened quickly. Either way, he was actually quoted in a letter, because this lady is writing this book. And honestly, do not read this book. For the love of God, do not read this book. Do not read any of the books out there unless they're written by Shanann's mom, because they really paint Shanann as the person who deserved to die. They really do. My Daddy, My Hero is a book out there. She's been charged with plagiarism, basically, with that book. There's a book that Chris's mom wrote that basically just paints Shanann as this evil person who deserved to die. She encouraged Chris to have affairs. Yeah. You encourage this to happen. So congratulations. So just don't read any of these books. These are just terrible books. But this book that's being put together, this lady has been writing Chris in prison for the past year. And in one of the letters, he's actually quoted saying, I knew she was gone when she relieved herself on the bed. Because, when a body dies, all of your stuff comes out.
Yeah. Well,
So-
yeah. I mean, your muscles relax, and that's
Yeah.
it.
So that would also explain why, you know, all the sheets were gone, is because she relieved herself on the bed. Yeah. This is where you say.
I don't have words. I
Yeah,
just
and
don't.
you know, I read this,
It's-
like
it's
I
disgusting.
researched this, and I'm just sitting here like I have the words for it, and I'm sitting here like, oh my god, because like the way he just describes it, and it's like, you know, I'll put the pictures of the letters like on our website and everything, because like you just read the letters, and he's just like this happy-go-lucky dude. Like, you're like, what the hell? Like, in the letters, he's actually talking about how, like, there was a petition to get all the pictures of Bella and Cece taken out of his cell. And he was like, it's just absurd that they'd want to hurt me like that and everything. But another prisoner said that if they did that, they would have to do it for the 500 other prisoners that have pictures of their victims in their cell because they're family members and stuff. Because, you know, some people, family members kill their family members, but then they have the pictures in their cell and stuff. And, like, he talks about how, like, I'll get to that at the end, actually. I'll get to that at the end, because there's just,
he is
it's
very
sick.
clearly in his brain. It sounds like he's separating himself, almost like he's separating himself from it. It's almost like this alter ego did
all of this,
and so he doesn't feel he's to blame because this other piece of him did it, which is why he was able to say, "Oh, Cheyenne or Shanann did this," because in his brain that was it was really the alter ego that was doing it. Just like I feel like this alter ego in his brain, he's basically made up to be Shanann. Like, she encouraged him to have affairs. She killed the daughters. She was asking, you know, for it. Like, it almost sounds like that's just his alter ego that he's put in there. But what do I know? I'm not a professional. So
what happens next is that's kind of up for speculation as well, obviously, because, you know, he wrote in the same letter that he had actually smothered Bella and Cece with their pillows, and he thought they had died. Now, he did this before he said that he did this before he had gone back into the bedroom and fought with Shanann. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, however, after he killed their mom, they had, quote unquote, woken up, and it looked like they had been through a lot of trauma. Like, their eyes were very bruised. Like, they were kind of lightheaded. Like he had smothered them, but he had only knocked them out and stuff. And so that's what it's kind of looking like. But in his interview, so, like, that's really the only thing that, like, differentiates from his interview and stuff, from the initial interview. So that in his interview, like the initial interview, he says that after he had killed Shanann, he had wrapped his wife's body up in a sheet and carried her downstairs. Not being able to carry her fully, he ended up dropping her and just continued to drag her down the stairs and through the house. And that's when the girls woke up from sleeping. So in his interview, he never stated that he actually tried to smother them before Shanann and stuff. So he ended up dragging her out. He went outside to his truck, put the truck into the garage, and ended up coming out of the garage, putting Shan into his back seat of his truck, but putting her, like, on the floorboard. He then went back into the house, collected the girls with their blankets and their stuffed animal, loaded them up into the truck, and then at this point in the court documents, he had texted a coworker, because this is about the time that he was supposed to go to work, saying, like, hey, I'm going out to, like, this site that the company owns.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I honestly think he probably, this just is so dark, he probably killed the girls second, because I imagine after he killed Shanann, he probably was like, if I'm ever caught, they're going to take my girls away from me.
No, because
I can't have them. Huh?
Because he didn't care. He did not care. Because in his letter, in his letter, he actually states this. He's like, you know, I took him to a birthday party. I gave him a bath, and I put them to bed, and I knew exactly what I was going to do that night, but I didn't stop myself. So this is premeditated. He knew what he was going. He went into this night knowing what he was going to do. And he confessed it in the original confession, like in the original, like, courthouse confession and stuff, where he was, like, at the jail and everything, confessing to everybody. He never mentioned any of that. It wasn't until he started writing these letters to this woman. So it's like, who knows what side of it is actually true. But what was weird to me was that, like, you know, people were like, oh, well, he just randomly went out to the site, you know, and I'm not an oil worker. I'm not.
No.
I don't work with petroleum. I don't work on sites like that. So I don't
No.
know, like, how they do things. I don't know if maybe Chris was supposed to be out that site, or like if he was just like, or if he was just known for going out and checking out random sites or whatever.
I bet this, again, speculation, but I bet he knew which site he was going to take him to. And so he probably took some steps ahead of time to ensure it wouldn't be weird that he went there at that time to, quote, do some work.
Or maybe, you know, he went out there to meet up with Nicole, because these are like out in the middle of nowhere sites. Like, it's the oil tanks with miles of farmland.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe he went out there and meet up with Nicole a few times. So it's like, you know, he made a habit of going out to this one frequently because of that.
Either to set up that sort of like, it's not weird that I'm going to be here at this time, or, you know, there's any number of reasons, but it doesn't matter. The point is that he did it.
So the next point does get super graphic. So when Chris got out to the oil site, okay, what happens next is from his exact statements during the interview. And this is from the courthouse interview and stuff. He said that when he got out to the site, he ended up killing Cece first. Okay. So he took the blanket that she had with her, put it over her face, and held it there until she stopped moving. He then took her out of the truck and took her to one of the oil tanks. Now, the way the oil tanks are set up, it's these two giant oil tanks side by side. Okay. The openings are about 8 inches in diameter. So he had to put her in there with, like, you know, her arms up like this. So up straight up in the air and everything. According to the autopsy report, she actually did have abrasions on her back from being put in there. He heard her hit the oil and heard the splash before he went back to the truck. He actually said later in the letter how he couldn't believe how easy it was, just kind of let her fall in there. He then goes on to say little Bella had the most will to live. Bella was still in there with her mom, and Chris had said that she seemed fully aware of what he was doing. She was actually quoted as saying, "Daddy, please no, please don't do to me what you did to Cece." Yeah. So Chris ended up, you know, putting her blanket over her head and smothering her. And in his letter, he says that she did fight back hard. She clawed at him, as well as, you know, trying to scream, trying to fight back. Autopsy reports actually back this up, as well as saying, because she had bruises and lacerations, like, on the inside of her mouth, like where it would be like if somebody's holding like a hand over your mouth. So she was trying to fight back. Chris said that when he killed her and it was silent, he just didn't feel anything. He just kind of put her in the oil tank too. But unfortunately, he did have to dislocate her arm to put her in it because Bella was a little bit bigger than Cece. He also mentioned that he put them into, because he was asked, why did you put them in 2 separate oil tanks? And he said, so they couldn't wake up, because for some reason he thought if they were together, they'd be able to wake up. Yeah, I don't know. So he went back to the truck, got Shanann out of the truck, and ended up taking her a little ways out into the field that was right next to the oil tanks, and just started digging. Now, after he had buried Shanann, so he had poured Shanann in there and everything and started digging, and then digging and she was buried in her t-shirt and underwear that she had gone to bed in the night. And coroner actually, when he did the examination, like, her amniotic sac was like bulging from her vagina at this point, because, you know, she was dead. So, like, it was trying to expel itself and stuff. So when they had found her, because when they found her, it was still a few days after they had died that when they had found her. So they ended up doing this. And then he ended up just going out to breakfast. He changed his clothes, wiped his hands off, got dressed, like, drove away, and ended up just going out to breakfast. Like, just completely just not acknowledging the fact that he just killed his entire family.
So, yuck.
Right?
Start there.
And his family is still like, oh, well, she's the one who killed the kids, and he just, you know, with all this information coming out, his family is still like, he just didn't know what he was doing. He was in a fit of rage.
No,
he definitely knew what he was doing.
Clearly in some sort of weird mental state. Not terribly disorganized, because I think what he said about the girls waking up, I think he was concerned about the girls waking up and then being able to help each other out of the oil tank.
Yeah. But I mean, there was no possible way that they would have been able to, unfortunately. Like, they would have died either way, even if they did wake up. And
Right.
the autopsy actually shows that there was crude oil found in their nose, their mouth, their throat, and their lungs.
So they
may not have actually been fully dead when he put them in there, just unconscious. So, but even if they had woken up, the height from the opening to the crude oil with nothing to be able to climb on, it would have, and then they would have been out there because like nobody went out there. It was days before anybody was actually out there again. So then if they even would have gotten out, like they were out in the middle of nowhere. Like it was just he knew what he was doing with that. So, and it was just insane. It's insane. And and I sat down and I read all the autopsies from all three and everything, and I'm just like, what the hell? So when he confessed in the video, his sister's asking him like, where are the girls buried? You need to tell us where the girls are buried. And he tells them. And when they're like, well, Chris, why don't you take us out there and show us exactly like, where Shanann is? Because he told them like, I put the girls in the oil tank. So it's not really hard to deduce where they are. But he was like, well, I buried Shanann away from the oil tanks. So they were like, why don't you come out there and show us? And he goes, oh no, I can't go out there. Yeah. Just like, oh no, I can't go out there. Like, not even like upset, not even like, oh no, I can't go out. Like, just like, oh no, I can't go out there. And they're like, okay. So they end up going out there without him. And when they eventually end up finding everybody, it was just super intense for the entire search team.
I mean, like, so I imagine children who have been killed is intense anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I just, sorry, his split personality disorder is just glaring in a lot of this. But
oh yeah,
I mean, how long had they been out there before they were found?
So he killed them on the 14th, and I believe they actually found them on the 16th. So because he was arrested on the 15th, and it was on the 16th, so it was only a few days. So I mean, technically the decomp wasn't bad. Like Shanann was buried only because she couldn't fit into the oil tanks. Like his plan was to put all three of them in there. However, she obviously couldn't fit into the 8-inch diameter hole. So
yeah, and
so the girls. So Shanann, when they dug her body up, she was obviously like, it was the same amount of decomp. It was what I told you about the fetus and stuff like that. And like, and she was apparently found like when he just kind of just like shook the sheet and had her roll into the hole. Like didn't try to place her in there, not just kind of just dumped her in there and started digging and like started covering her up. But so they found her. The girls, though, it ended up making the situations that the investigators found themselves in, like, a lot worse. Like, I know probably a lot of them had to seek therapy after this because of what they saw. So, the reports say that the detectives went to the top of the oil tanks, and they actually opened up the holes, and they found hair belonging to each girl respectively on each opening, which means that when they were put in, some of their hair got caught on the opening and was there. The detectives then opened the hatch and shined a flashlight in, eventually putting eyes on both girls' bodies, which were like kind of just face down in the water. Now, Cece was in like a full, like, I believe it was like a full nightgown and stuff. And Bella was actually in like a little night t-shirt and like underwear, like a pull up and stuff. And so, once they declared, it was the girls and stuff, they ended up actually manually draining the oil from the tanks so that way they could go in and get the girls. The issue is the fumes because, it's crude tanker oil. Like, this shit is like, it's not good. No. And so the fumes were so bad that they had to wear like these special hazmat suits and they could only be in there for like minutes at a time. So it really made recovering the bodies a long process. Eventually they were able to actually get the girls out. But because they had been in the oil for too long, it kind of gave the same effect as if a body has been in water for too long, except the oil disintegrates the body a lot faster. So when they went to actually go pick up Cece, so they had to have two people to pick up the bodies because like their bodies had soaked up so much oil that they were a lot heavier than they actually were. So when they went to actually go pick up the girls and take them out, Cece's hand, like the skin from her hand actually degloved off. Like, that's how bad it was. And Bella, when they put her on, because, like, they carried them on stretchers and stuff. So when they put her on, when they put them on stretchers and then put them in the body bags, she had parts of her back, like, come off of her onto the stretcher. Like, the police, like, remember seeing it. The coroners had to be, like, super, like, careful with their autopsies because of it. Like, because it's just, like, their skin was just coming off. It was terrible. It was absolutely fucking terrible. Yeah, like, the face that you're making right now is, like, literally the face I've been making for, like, the past week reading all, because, like, I sat down and I read the detective's reports. So I read all of the descriptions of what happened, and I read the autopsy reports with all of the descriptions. And let me tell you, I'm going to put links to them on our site, but it's gruesome. So if you're not like me, where you're used to reading that kind of stuff and you easily get triggered by it, do not look at it, because it is gruesome. Like, especially because it's the girls. Like, it is. Yeah. So the coroners, like I said, ended up having to handle the girls with extreme care. Like, extreme care. And like I said, the autopsy reports as well as the full affidavit is graphic, but it really explains everything from start to finish. After the girls were found and evidence was collected, on November 6, 2018, Chris Watts ended up pleading guilty to the murder of his wife and children. Shanann's family ended up requesting that the death penalty be taken off the table, as Shanann wouldn't want any more deaths to happen from this. So on November 19th, Chris was sentenced to 5 life sentences, 3 consecutive and 2 concurrent, without the possibility of parole. Shanann, Nico, Bella, and Cece were all sent back home to North Carolina to be buried near Shanann's family. The downfall is Shanann's family, though they could say goodbye to Shanann, they couldn't say goodbye to Cece and Bella. Cece and Bella, because they had been in the crude oil, had to be sealed up in special coffins and actually driven from Colorado to North Carolina, because they were so flammable that if they were near anything that could ignite them, they would blow up a building. Like, these little girls were essentially, by him dipping their bodies in this, these little girls were essentially turned into bombs. So, you know, Shanann's family was obviously, like, they've given an interview about it where they were obviously very upset that they were not able to say goodbye to their granddaughters in a way that they needed to. Right. They ended up creating a small memorial to the family, and at the site that they are buried, to say how much they do say how much they miss them every day. Bella would have been 7, Celeste would have been 5, and Nico would have been 1 this year. The family remembers the girls as happy, bubbly personalities, with Bella being the mommy of the 2. They remember Shanann as being a great mom who loved her children and would have done anything for them. But most importantly, they just try to keep their love and spirit alive as a memorial to them.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.